Welcome back to the campus of Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia, site of the one and only vice presidential debate in the 2016 race. Tonight, in an election season characterized by outside personalities and heated rhetoric, the traditionally mild-mannered vice presidential nominees prepare for a different kind of debate. Maybe. Good evening. With a raucous crowd here at Longwood University, I'm Brett Baer. In the debate hall just down the way from us here on campus, tonight's vice presidential debate kicks off in 3 hours, featuring Democrat Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia and Republican Governor Mike Pence of Indiana. They're in some ways the polar opposites of their ticket mates. For the people polled about them who say they do know the two men, both come in with positive approval ratings and honest and trustworthy numbers. Tonight, the glare of the presidential race spotlight will hit the differences, perhaps. We have Fox team coverage of the 2016 race. Jennifer Griffin is covering the Clinton campaign tonight. She joins us from the spin room here in Farmville. First up, though, chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is outside the debate hall and starts us off tonight with the latest on Team Trump. Good evening, Carl.
Hi, Brett. Well, Governor Mike Pence of Indiana knows that in addition to criticizing Hillary Clinton, he will need to answer and defend a number of controversies that have been revealed over the last year and a half of Trump's candidacy, as well as questions about his temperament. In Colorado, Trump visited with energy executives this morning.
And she said she's going to put you out of business.
Hours before his running mate takes the debate stage, Trump rallied Prescott Valley, Arizona.
I want to send our best wishes to our great Governor Mike Pence as he prepares for his debate tonight.
Trump's attacks on government and national stability hit a new level in Colorado yesterday with a broadside on the U.S. criminal justice system.
The investigation of Hillary Clinton was rigged. It's a shame, and I must tell you, it's one of the saddest things that many of us have ever witnessed in this country. We've become a banana republic.
Pence expects to be asked about Trump's business dealings, perhaps including Trump's rental of office space from 1998 to 2003 to Bank Melli of Iran, which was linked to terrorist groups in Iran's nuclear program. The vice presidential nominee was loose defending his running mate at a Virginia rally last night and let some profanity slip while bashing the media.
They think they finally got him. And then they turn on the television the next morning and Donald Trump is still standing stronger than ever before and fighting for the American people. It really is fun to watch, I'll tell you what.
Pence knows he'll be asked to explain his own flip-flops on supporting NAFTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as well as the Iraq War, along with opposing Trump's Muslim ban before he joined the ticket and aligned himself with those policies. He has seldom talked about his vice presidential rival on the trail, but last night in Virginia took a shot at Kaine.
When he was governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, he left the state $2 billion in the hole. I'm proud to say we've got the largest surplus in Indiana history.
With down-ballot Republicans worried that Trump could hurt their election hopes, New Hampshire Republican U.S. Senator Kelly Ayotte, who has long criticized Trump, tripped up in a debate last night.
Certainly, there are many role models that we have, and I believe can serve as president, and so absolutely, I would do that.
Ayotte issued a statement saying she misspoke and thinks neither Clinton nor Trump are good examples. For Pence, the challenge tonight is defending what critics call Trump's erratic temperament and xenophobic racist rhetoric, while keeping the emphasis on Clinton criticism. But Pence say don't expect a lot of smash mouth or name calling, noting that it was Trump himself who said he didn't put Pence on the ticket to be the attack dog. And after all, voters have seen that Trump pretty much has that part of it covered. And yes, Brett, there will be live tweeting from Donald Trump tonight during the debate.
And that will be interesting, worth following. Carl Cameron live just down the road here. Hillary Clinton is trying to shore up what looks like a growing lead over Donald Trump in the key swing state of Pennsylvania, while she cheers on her VP choice. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the Clinton campaign story today from the spin room. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Brett. Hillary Clinton just took questions from reporters traveling with her in Pennsylvania. She was asked about her husband's remarks about Obamacare, in which he called it the craziest thing he'd seen. She said they would fix what's broken and keep what works. She also attacked Donald Trump on his recent remarks about veterans with post-traumatic stress, suggesting that his remarks added to the stigma, suggesting that some could handle the stresses of war and others can't. Asked how she thought her running mate would do in the debate tonight, Hillary Clinton answered with a thumbs up. The latest polls show Clinton pulling ahead among women voters, especially white women in the suburbs of Philadelphia, where she campaigned today with her daughter Chelsea and Hollywood actress Elizabeth Banks, a University of Pennsylvania graduate. Clinton was asked by a 15-year-old girl in the audience about Trump's recent body-shaming remarks involving a former Miss Universe.
As the first female president, how would you undo some of that damage?
We need to laugh at it. We need to refute it. We need to ignore it. And we need to stand up to it, and especially the bullying. There are too many young women online who are being bullied.
While campaigning for Clinton in Florida, Vice President Joe Biden lashed out at remarks Donald Trump made about veterans suffering with post-traumatic stress, adding he feels sorry for Mike Pence.
What a hell of a way to make a living, to be vice president, have to get up every morning and support someone you don't agree with. Maybe he does.
The Trump campaign expects Tim Kaine to be the one on defense.
You're going to see tomorrow a feisty Mike Pence take on the record of Hillary Clinton and hold her accountable for the failures of her policies as Secretary of State, also as United States Senator. Talk about an unremarkable record.
As the two vice presidential nominees prepare to square off in Farmville, recent polls show Clinton making gains in certain key swing states, but not in Ohio, where she is trailing by 5 points. A new Quinnipiac poll shows Clinton up by 3 in North Carolina, 4 in Pennsylvania, and 5 points in Florida. That's where 2 new Spanish-language television ads target Hispanic voters. Clinton's campaign chairman wondered out loud about Pence's strategy tonight.
Does he double down on the bigotry and the kind of campaign, the negative campaign that Donald Trump has run from the beginning, or does he try to preserve his own political future and kind of distance himself from that?
According to the latest Fox News poll, more voters have a positive than negative view of Kaine and Pence, but 3 in 10 don't know who they are. In the spin room, campaign spokesman Jen Palmieri acknowledged that the Clinton campaign is having some trouble, especially among white voters in Ohio. It's not clear how Tim Kaine will appeal to those voters tonight, especially since he was in favor of some of those trade deals like the TPP. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin live in the spin room. Jennifer, thank you. So who do you think will win tonight's debate and why? Let me know on Twitter at Brett Baier. You can use the hashtag special report or on Facebook at facebook.com/BrettBaierSR. What a difference 6 years makes. Tonight, Democrats are turning on President Obama's health care law publicly, openly, pointedly. Correspondent Doug McElway back in Washington on why some are jumping off the Obamacare bandwagon.
For the husband of a presidential candidate who has pledged to, quote, defend and expand the Affordable Care Act, it was a remarkable dig at Obamacare.
You've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world.
Bill Clinton's criticism appeared to echo that of conservatives and Republicans, the very people whom President Obama blamed for the law's shortcomings, in a New York Magazine interview published October 2nd, in which he said, quote, you hit a point where if Congress just is not willing to make any constructive modifications and it's all political football, then you're getting a suboptimal solution. Obamacare critics note a key distinction between Bill Clinton's criticism and that of Republicans. The GOP argues for less government intervention in health care, while Bill Clinton was making the case for more. It's the case Hillary Clinton surrogates made today in defending the former president's remarks.
The marketplace skews the costs. This is exactly why we've got to do something about premium increases, but I assume also he was including in that prescription drug prices.
Which is why she's put forward, Hillary has put forward additional policies, including public option.
Critics say there is already a public option of sorts. It's called Medicaid. Under Medicaid, it's not competition which sets the rates at which doctors and hospitals are paid. It's the government.
If you push the payment rates too low, then physicians and hospitals stop taking the patients, and then you have access problems. So there's a real tension point around all these questions.
While the administration and the Clinton campaign increasingly talk about the need for a public option, they don't often talk about the quality of care associated with a public option. Critics like Capretta maintain that it will only add to wait times as doctors and hospitals opt out, unable to afford the artificially low reimbursements set by the government. Brett?
Doug McKelway in the White House briefing room. Doug, thank you. Well, there was not much sizzle behind the smoke today from the founder of the WikiLeaks website. Julian Assange had hinted at revelations about Hillary Clinton that would change the dynamic of the election. Tonight, Trump supporters who stayed up overnight to watch it live are still waiting for something. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen has the story of a big hype with no delivery.
Not since Y2K has a much ballyhooed event or happening proved so uneventful and not happening.
A new reason for Hillary Clinton to be very concerned about a potential October surprise.
Instead, in a remote video appearance from the Ecuadorian embassy in London, his home for the last 5 years, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange touted his organization's 10th anniversary, appealed for donations, and delivered no documents damaging to Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton as expected, only a fresh vow to release new material in coming weeks.
Our upcoming publication significant in relation to the U.S. election? Yeah, we think they're significant.
WikiLeaks' release in July of 20,000 emails from the Democratic National Committee exposed collusion between the Clinton campaign and the DNC against insurgent candidate Bernie Sanders and triggered the resignation of the party's chair and top officers. That in turn fueled charges, unsubstantiated to date, that the Trump campaign is allied with Russian hackers widely believed responsible for the DNC hack.
That's a really, really troubling occurrence. That's never happened before in an American election.
When FBI Director James Comey chose in July to impeach Clinton's credibility rather than indict her over her use of a private email server as Secretary of State, all eyes turned to Assange with his promises of forthcoming bombshells as the next public figure outside of the candidates on whom the election was thought to hinge.
My gut tells me that he does have some information, probably of Russian origin, that he is preparing to use, and that perhaps Vladimir Putin, whoever else is responsible for this leak, is having second thoughts about the release of that information. The consequences of such a leak, such interference in the American election would be astonishing.
As if on cue, someone claiming to be the hacker Guccifer 2.0 posted documents online today purportedly hacked from the server of the Clinton Foundation. The early results appeared to include private data on Democratic donors, but the foundation told us they have no indication of a breach and have not been notified by law enforcement of one.
We'll follow that. That's obviously what they said before the DNC leak as well, but we'll check it out. James, as always, thank you. The Obama administration says it is not abandoning the peace process in Syria, but senior officials admit the administration currently has no actual plan now that talks with Russia have broken off and bombs are still falling on civilians in Syria. Correspondent Kevin Cork is at the White House tonight with this story. Good evening, Kevin.
Hey, good evening to you, Brett. Despite accusing the Russians of turning a blind eye to the suffering perpetrated on the Syrian people by their own leadership, the U.S. continues to pledge its continued pursuit for peace in Syria.
I want to be very, very clear to everybody. We are not giving up on the Syrian people. We are not abandoning the pursuit of peace. We are not going to leave the multilateral field. We are going to continue to try to find a way forward in order to end this war.
Meanwhile, the list of critics continues to grow of the president's policies in Syria. Richard Cohen in the Washington Post writing, it has led him into hallucinatory explanations of his decisions. He mangles the facts, jumbles chronology, and in effect holds himself guiltless for Syria's approximately 500,000 deaths, 8 million internally displaced persons, and a tidal wave of immigrants that has destabilized Europe. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said today in the briefing that what's happening in Syria, Brett, is heartbreaking, but he says the administration is yet to see a credible alternative to the U.S.'s existing policy. Meanwhile, the battle against ISIS and al-Qaeda continues. We have news of a U.S. airstrike told to Fox News today that may have actually successfully targeted an al-Qaeda leader in Syria. They continue to study the results of that strike. But as David Petraeus told Fox News, it's the placement of civilians near some of these high-value targets that can make a strike like that all the more difficult. In particular, he pointed out that could certainly be the case of a high-value target like Abu al-Baghdadi, for example.
There's a question you should ask. Will this operation take more bad guys off the street than it creates by its conduct? You kill lots of civilians, even if you get Baghdadi, and you may actually create more bad guys than you take off the street.
Also new tonight, Brett, we have learned in a report that al-Baghdadi may have been poisoned and is said to be near death in Iraq. We'll keep following that story as we learn more, Brett.
Kevin Cork live on the North Lawn. Kevin, thank you. And we'll see if we hear about Syria at the debate tonight. An American service member died today after being hit by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan. The Pentagon says the special operations soldier was on foot patrol with Afghan forces in a northeastern province bordering Pakistan. Pentagon Press Secretary Peter Cook called the incident a combat situation, but refused to call it combat when asked by Fox News. This is the second U.S. death from a roadside bomb in Afghanistan since late August, the third commander to die in action there this year. Markets today, the stocks were off. The Dow lost 85, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ dropped 11. Residents of South Florida are bracing themselves tonight for what could be a monster hurricane. Matthew is already dumping huge amounts of rain as it whips through the Caribbean. Correspondent Steve Harrigan is keeping his eyes on the skies tonight in Miami Beach.
The last thing a country with 50,000 people living in tents needed was a Category 4 hurricane. But that's what Haiti got as the eye of Matthew passed over the southwestern tip of the island at dawn, bringing with it 145-mile-per-hour winds, a 10-foot storm surge, and most destructive of all, more than 3 feet of rain. Haiti's interim president says the death toll is not yet known.
There are people missing. They didn't respect the alerts. They've lost their lives.
After losing some strength over Haiti, the storm pushed on towards the eastern tip of Cuba, where government workers organized the evacuation of 180,000 people. 700 Americans have also left the island, non-essential personnel from the U.S. Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay, flown to Pensacola, many with their pets in tow. The Navy staff and the 61 Guantanamo detainees will shelter in place. As predictions of the storm's path have moved west, Florida has come under threat. Authorities have issued tropical storm watches for Miami-Dade and Broward counties, while counties further north up the coast are under hurricane watches, alerting residents they have 2 days to prepare. Bottled water is in high demand, disappearing from some store shelves, and gas lines are forming. Floridians are giving heed to their governor's warnings of a worst-case scenario.
Hurricane Matthew is a Category 4 storm, and we cannot take it lightly. It is absolutely deadly. If Matthew directly impacts Florida, there will be massive destruction that we haven't seen in years.
States of emergency have been declared across all of Florida and several counties in North Carolina. South Carolina's governor has called for the evacuation of 1 million people from coastal cities before the storm hits. Here in Florida, no similar declaration yet. Brett?
Steve Harrigan live in Miami Beach. Steve, thank you. You can see the latest with this storm right here on Fox. Up next, lawmakers are casting more doubts on the Justice Department's handling of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. We'll have that. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 59 in Indianapolis has Indiana State Police expand their voter registration fraud probe. Officers served a search warrant this morning for the Indiana Voter Registration Project in downtown Indianapolis. The investigation started last month when at least 10 voter registration forms were confirmed to have fraudulent information. WIBW in Topeka, Kansas, where police say they had received calls about sightings of spooky or creepy clowns. This, believe it or not, has become a nationwide issue. Monday night, students at Merrimack College in Massachusetts were told to shelter in place after a hoax tweet about a clown with a weapon. Classes at one Maryland school were canceled yesterday over clown threats. President Obama's press secretary was even asked about the creepy clown outbreak today.
This is a situation that local law enforcement authorities take quite seriously, and they should carefully and thoroughly review perceived threats to the safety of the community.
And this is a live look at New York from our affiliate Fox 5. One of the big stories there tonight, an explosion destroys 2 multifamily homes in Paterson, New Jersey. New Jersey's largest utility says it does not yet know what caused that explosion, but is investigating. City officials say residents had reported a possible gas leak, and firefighters arrived minutes later. They heard hissing sounds coming from the homes and quickly evacuated them. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We're, of course, outside the Beltway as well. And as we head to break, a behind-the-scenes look inside the debate hall. There are about 600 seats here at Willett Hall. This is the debate site for the vice presidential debate. 100 of these seats will be filled by students at Longwood University. You can see behind me the set. It may look familiar in the backdrop because it is the same. It was transported from Hofstra, the site of the first presidential debate. This, however, is a seated debate at this table. Governor Pence will be on the right side of your screen, Senator Kaine on the left. Senator Kaine gets the first question. There are 9 segments run by moderator Elaine Quijano of CBS. It should be interesting. 90 minutes. Special Report continues after this. Welcome back to Longwood University, site of tonight's debate. We are getting new reaction tonight to the revelation that the FBI and the Justice Department agreed to destroy the computers belonging to senior Clinton aides in exchange for their cooperation in the now closed criminal investigation. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has our update tonight from Washington. Catherine.
Brett, legal experts said today the deals struck by the Justice Department with Clinton attorneys Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson may obstruct current and future congressional investigations. According to the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, the FBI got access to their laptops, and in exchange, the 2 attorneys who oversaw the sorting and the deletion of 30,000 Clinton emails that they deemed personal got a guarantee the FBI would destroy the computers after its review. The timeline matters here. In early March 2015, Congress issued a preservation order and subpoena for Clinton's emails. By the end of that month, after a conference call with Clinton's legal team, a Denver-based IT firm electronically shredded the Clinton email archive. Significantly, the side deals stipulate that agents could not search the laptops for records from this time period.
Regardless of how you feel about the merits of the email scandals, we're now in really very strange waters. I mean, when you have the executive branch reaching an agreement that a party can destroy evidence being sought by Congress, it's a very serious matter.
During last week's congressional testimony, the FBI director played down the immunity deals and emphasized the Attorney General's team was in the lead.
Who authorized granting Cheryl Mills immunity?
It's a decision made by the Department of Justice. I don't know at what level inside. In our investigations, any kind of immunity comes from the prosecutors, not the investigators.
In March, Clinton told CBS that her team was cooperating, but the FBI files and new evidence suggest otherwise, Brett.
Catherine, thank you. Let's get reaction tonight from the Clinton campaign. Brian Fallon is Clinton campaign press secretary. Brian, thanks for being here. We want to talk about the debate and set up to the expectations for tonight. I want to get you to react to that story and as it's developed, this immunity part of this story. Why does that look bad, the immunity to Cheryl Mills and others, and then the destruction of those computers?
No, and here's why, Brett. This is a matter that was closed back in July. So first of all, I think it's important for everyone to realize that even though this information is coming out now, it's just because the Justice Department provided things to Congress and Republican members of Congress are leaking it out about a month or so away from the general election. But it all concerns an investigation that was closed back in July. And at the time that the investigation was closed, Director Comey stood up at a press conference, we all remember it, and said that there was no basis to bring a case here. And he said it wasn't even a close call. And so at this point, we're delving into this. So to the extent that it's being aired now, let's talk about it. These were routine immunity agreements that were provided. They came after both of these two lawyers sat down and answered every question that the FBI had. They submitted to those interviews completely voluntarily. Then a couple weeks later, it was indicated by the Justice Department they'd also like to look at their computer equipment. They said sure. They had the opportunity to thoroughly examine it. And in terms of what happened to them afterwards, that's entirely entirely up to the Justice Department and the FBI, so you'd have to ask them what they're doing with it.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a
the
weird
devices
part of
are
it,
in their hands.
An immunity deal that has a destruction of computer tied to it. You know, when there was, at the beginning, the thought was you don't need these computers because there aren't emails on here that matter and they're personal, so why turn them over? But then to destroy the computer afterwards just seems a little strange.
Well, it's in the FBI and the Justice Department's hands about what to do with those devices.
I want to move on to other topics. Taxes are a big issue, but before we leave this one, Brian Pagliano, IT specialist, he was paid by the Clintons. In 2011, he put the dollar amount that almost exactly matches the dollar amount that Hillary Clinton deducted on her taxes for computer work. So did she deduct taxes for having this guy erase the servers in this investigation?
No. Brian Pagliano was somebody that innocently set up an IT system early in 2009. It was a system that was designed to host the staff emails for President Clinton's personal office, and then Secretary Clinton made the decision to have her account be hosted on that same server. All of that stuff that played out in 2013 was when the server was in the possession of a private firm. It had nothing to do with Brian Pagliano.
All right, the taxes issue. The First Lady was out on the stump today. She brought up this issue in the crowd. Take a listen.
The election in November will determine whether we close tax loopholes that allow billionaires to keep gaming the system at the expense of working folks.
So does Secretary Clinton think it was a tax loophole that Donald Trump took advantage of, allegedly, as the New York Times pointed out?
Well, the Trump campaign has been pretty fierce in advocating the fact that this was all legal, what happened, that allowed him to potentially zero out his tax liability for some 18 years. And that may be true. That's not the point that we're making. The point that we're making is it fair? When somebody makes as much money as Donald Trump, should he be able to get away with not paying any taxes when hardworking Americans that are making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year are doing their fair share and contributing to the cost of hiring first responders, hiring teachers in our public schools, and
so
supporting our military?
Is there anything specifically in Secretary Clinton's tax plan that would change the carry-forward provision that Donald Trump took advantage of?
Well, we want to tackle some of the other loopholes that probably allow him to have a lower aggregate gross income, so that the effect of this net operating loss provision that he's taking advantage of would be less impactful for Donald Trump. Under our proposal, he would almost certainly pay more. And we'd also have proposals like the Buffett rule, which would ensure that taxpayers that are making a certain amount of income, the top 1% or so, are paying a guaranteed minimum amount in terms of a percentage of their taxes, so that people like Warren Buffett are not paying lower rates than their secretaries. She's also got provisions that would say that if you're outsourcing jobs in terms of big corporations, if you're outsourcing jobs overseas, we're going to claw back some of the tax advantages that you took advantage of while you were having those jobs here.
So she would close other loopholes, not specifically change the carry-forward provision that you're talking about?
No, we want to change a lot of the provisions that we suspect that Donald Trump is taking advantage of that helps lower his income that's subject to taxes. Okay. But we don't know all the loopholes that he specifically is taking advantage of because he refuses to release his tax returns.
Okay. I asked Secretary Clinton the last time I interviewed her in June what she would do differently than President Obama on the economy. She said that she wanted to point out that the economy recovered, first of all, under President Obama, but second of all, said that an infrastructure project would be really on top of her mind. Today, the president writes an op-ed in Huffington Post, and he says, Republican leaders in Congress have proven they won't work with my administration, refusing to make long overdue investments, rebuilding our roads, bridges, ports, airports. A major infrastructure push would put Americans back to work and make our businesses more competitive, but Congress can't get it done. So if Congress can't get it done for President Obama, why would it get it done for President Clinton?
Well,
Hillary Clinton.
I think that in the heels of this election, if Hillary Clinton wins, I do think that there will be momentum for something like an infrastructure proposal, because she'll have campaigned over this last year and a half on something like the infrastructure proposal that she's put forward, which she has said she wants to make a 100-day priority, so something that she'd work on in the first couple months of her administration. So when she goes around the country and talks about it so much, if she wins election, I think that the Republicans will feel pressure to do business with her on that, especially because it's a proposal that a lot of Republicans support. The Chamber of Commerce supports it. And guess guess what? The Republican nominee for president also supports increased investment for infrastructure. Now, he doesn't have a plan as specific as Hillary Clinton's. He can't tell you how much he would spend or how he would pay for it like Hillary Clinton can. But notionally, he said that he thinks that we should be doing that. So at that point,
a mandate,
if Paul Ryan has his own standard bearer on his side, Donald Trump, who he's endorsed, also saying we need to spend more on infrastructure, I don't know what argument they'd have to not act on it with Hillary Clinton as president.
Last thing, expectations for tonight, fiery or policy substance? What is the Clinton campaign looking for tonight?
I think this is going to be a very unusual vice presidential debate for the very simple reason that usually in past instances with somebody like Sarah Palin on the debate stage or Dan Quayle back in 1988, you want to see, is this person that was picked as the running mate up to the job if the worst happens? And in this case, you know, for better or for worse, we have our disagreements with Mike Pence, a lot of disagreements. But I don't think his fundamental qualifications are being called into question. The issue for the Trump campaign is the man at the top of the ticket. And so Mike Pence can go out and have a blockbuster performance, and it won't solve the problem for the Trump campaign, which is that their own candidate for President Donald Trump is the one that's temperamentally unfit.
Brian, we appreciate you coming by.
Thanks, Brady.
When we come back, the other side of the story will be joined by Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus. As we head to break, a look at the spin room where staff and surrogates will make the case for their candidates, Brian included, I think, after tonight's showdown. Here at Longwood University, they have a similar setup as we've seen in many debate sites, and this is the media room. You can see all the chairs here. This is where all the reporters will be watching the debate and covering it. There are reporters from all over the world covering this. We don't have the specific number, but there's a ton of them. This actually, until about a month and a half ago, was the recreation center, and you're standing where the basketball courts are in Longwood University. As you walk down here, this is the way to the spin room. That is the place where all of the spinners come to talk to the reporters. Watch your step here, Greg. You walk through right here, and all the networks have a setup, and we'll be covering all the action after the debate from this room here, the Spin Alley. Special report will continue after this. Who knew Donald Duck would be here? In our last segment, we spoke with Hillary Clinton's press secretary. Now, the Republican perspective with GOP Chairman Reince Priebus. Mr. Chairman, thanks for being here. Exciting night.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about the debate and your expectations in just a minute. I want to cover a couple of other news topics. First of all, Senator Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire at a debate last night said that Donald Trump could be a role model. And then after the debate, she came out and issued a statement and said, I misspoke tonight. While I would hope all our children would aspire to be president, neither Donald Trump nor Hillary Clinton have set a good example, and I wouldn't hold up either of them as role models for my kids. So is Donald Trump a role model?
I think everyone's a role model in different ways, and I think he is a role model. When you look at someone who has built businesses, lost businesses, come back, lived the American dream, a person who sets goals, he's a winner. I think he is a role model. And look, I think all of us in different ways are role models. I mean, there's some things I'm good at, there's some things you're good at, and I think we're all God's children, and we all have and good in all of us. So,
and these kids are obviously fired up behind us.
There's nothing better than being a college Republican or a college Democrat. This is like the Super Bowl for them, so I get it.
Yeah, especially at Longwood University. The Senator Warren, she tweeted out, you can't take this back, you can't walk it back. Is this a problem for Senator Ayotte?
No, I don't think it's a problem at all. Look, she's got to run her race in New Hampshire, and she's doing a great job, and she's one of the best senators in the country. But look, I think you got to look at what's disqualifying. What's disqualifying? What Mr. Fallon didn't talk about in the previous segment was the fact that here you have a Secretary of State that is gaining her wealth by selling her position to foreign countries, bringing money in the door to the Clinton Foundation, then profiting on those through speeches and sending Bill Clinton across the country. That's the issue. I mean, we can talk all day long about quotes that Donald Trump has given from 25 years ago, or whether he lost almost, whether there was a business carryover and a tax return in 1995. But the point is, when Hillary Clinton was asked about something really important, like whether or not she gave away state secrets, she told the IRS 39 times, I don't recall. That's important. And she is not fit for the job because she has been in the job and she hasn't succeeded. She's failed at every level.
Well, something Donald Trump said just last weekend on Twitter is probably going to come into focus tonight. One would guess that Senator Kaine is going to go after that on the temperament issue. Donald Trump tweeting tonight, I will be watching the great Governor Mike Pence live tweeting the VP debate starting at 8:30 Eastern Time. Enjoy. So are you worried about the live tweeting?
I'm not worried about it at all. I talked to Donald about it this morning. I'm not worried about it. Look,
but what about the temperament attack that they are now hitting again and again and again?
Well, that's their attack. But you want to talk about temperament? I mean, all you have to do is look at Hillary Clinton. I mean, you can look at Hillary Clinton's temperament. You can look how she's used her position from way before, whether it was when Bill Clinton was Attorney General, when he was governor, when she was First Lady, when she was Senator, when she was Secretary of State. At every single level, she's used her positions to either gain wealth or get ahead on the back of the taxpayers. Donald Trump is a guy who's built his fortune by himself through business. I mean, he did it the American way. Hillary Clinton has made a fortune off of what? Off of serving the American people? The question is not what Donald Trump's tax return says. The question is, how is it that Hillary Clinton, who has apparently been in public service for 30 years, made $200 million? How's that possible?
All right, President Obama, I referenced it in the last interview, wrote an op-ed saying, in the city of self-inflicted wounds, this, talking about the Merrick Garland holdup, is one of the more dangerous, less defensible than most. 202 days since I nominated Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. On countless priorities, he writes, issues that matter to people across the country, regardless of their politics, Republicans in Washington have traded progress for partisanship. Their obstruction underscores a fundamental misunderstanding of the way our government should work. Your response?
My response is when President Obama had full reign over the House and the Senate, they passed the massive stimulus package that totally failed and drove up the national debt and the deficit. He passed Obamacare, which is failing all over the country. Thank God Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, and Speaker Boehner came in to stop that agenda. But I would say this, when it came to Keystone Pipeline, he blocked it. When it came to overhauling Obamacare, he blocked it. You know, for the first time in 10 years, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell passed the first bicameral budget bill in 2015 in over 10 years. The only person that's incapable of bringing people together in Washington, D.C. is President Obama and his cohort, Hillary Clinton. That's what this election is all about.
Vice President Biden today jumped on something that Donald Trump said about PTSD last night. The Trump campaign has been clear that they said the person who asked it was satisfied with the response, but here's Vice President Biden today.
Then he points out to the veterans in the room and says, and you're strong, you can handle it. But a lot of people can't handle it. Where in the hell is he from? No. This is deadly earnest. I don't think he was trying to be mean. He is just so thoroughly, completely uninformed.
What about that?
Well, look, if you listen to his entire statement, it was very compassionate. He talked to the generals that were in the room. They totally disagreed with that characterization. I think people like Joe Biden and Obama and Hillary Clinton should really ask the question why these vets aren't taken care of when they come back on their watch. They're waiting in lines at VAs across the country, in some cases dying, and they didn't do a thing about it. So Joe Biden, if he's mad, he ought to look in the mirror and ask himself why after his entire career, 8 years as vice president, he didn't do a darn thing about it. It's on his watch, not on Donald Trump. He's the private citizen. They're the ones that were in the position to do something.
Same question I left Brian Fallon with. Your expectations for tonight? Heated policy? What does it look like, this debate?
Look, I think it's going to be heated over policy, put it that way. I mean, I think these are two people that have been involved for a long time. But look, if you look at Tim Kaine and what he's done as governor here, raising taxes, the budgets went out of control. He didn't do a good job in Virginia. You compare that to Mike Pence, unemployment down, spending down, a big turnaround that he continued with Mitch Daniels in Indiana. It's a great career and a great story.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Brad.
Next up, tonight's big debate and the issues surrounding Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton that they'll talk about tonight. We will talk with our panel here in Farmville, Virginia when we come back. As we head to break, Twitter is here as well, and they're ready to take a look at the social media side of tonight's debate. We're at the media room here at Longwood University. We're going to find our friends from Twitter. Adam Sharp. Hey, Adam.
Brett, good to see you.
Big night tonight. Show us what you got.
Well, we had a big night earlier in the week with the presidential debate. Looking here, most tweeted moments came around the economy, largely talking about taxes and Donald Trump's returns. But tonight, the vice presidential nominees take the stage.
Different picture.
A blank slate, if you will. Lots of conversation around them when they were announced and rolled out at the conventions, and then just a low rumble since. The conversation about these candidates relative to the top of the ticket, only half that of Biden and Ryan 4 years ago.
What about the top issues on Twitter that you see throughout?
So for the year to date, foreign affairs #1, terrorism, guns, race, and the economy. Now those top four tend to respond to big news events like race right there after the Dallas police shootings. But the economy, it always comes back to the pocketbook. Slow and steady, always in the top 5, year in, year out.
Likely to be that way tonight. All right, tweet you at
Adam S.
At Brett Baer. Special report continues after this. About 2 hours from now, we'll start our coverage, and inside the debate hall, they are just starting to get ready. There you see the set for the vice presidential debate tonight. The latest polls in this race, the average of polls, the Fox index, if you will, has Hillary Clinton with a 2.2 point lead over Donald Trump, and that includes some polls out today and yesterday. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Ed O'Keefe, reporter with the Washington Post. Tucker Carlson, host of Fox and Friends Weekend. And we welcome Phil Musser, chairman of Image and former senior advisor to Mike Pence. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Phil, let me start with you. This is Mike Pence's big night. You know, he likes to say he's vanilla. But what about tonight? What will he do?
Look, I think there'll be more than vanilla. But this is just kind of a second reintroduction for Mike Pence to America. Most of America doesn't really know who Governor Pence is, but he's got a chance to really talk about what he's done in the Congress. I expect that he'll talk about his foreign policy experience in the Congress, his leadership in the Congress, and someone who knows how to help make Washington work. And then he's got a terrific track record in the state of Indiana, growing the economy, balancing the budget, really investing in education. And so his job tonight, I think, will be show that he is a steady second hand to Donald Trump who can help him bring the real change that Trump's talking about in this.
Traditionally, what trips him up?
Traditionally, what trips up Mike Pence? You know, I think I'm going to have to duck that question, Brett,
yeah,
because
I think
this is a big moment, and I think Pence is ready. You know, he's practiced. They've been methodical. They've got a plan. They've executed well. He's got a good team of advisors around him. I think he's going to be in there, ready. I'm watching the pivots.
If Donald Trump answered that question, he would just head on say something trips him up, and the pivot. Yeah, Ed, what do you think? Fiery? What is tonight?
I hope there's at least a little conversation about issues, but I do think both of these guys have a fair amount of work to introduce themselves to the crowd that may show up and tune in. I'm struck by, I think now, 4 polls in the last few days that suggest at least 35% of Americans don't know one of these two guys. Pence actually better known than Kaine, and both of them I think have some explaining to do. Look, the nation's on the verge of either electing the oldest guy or the second oldest person ever elected president, and I think Americans have a bit of a responsibility to be aware of who the number 2 could be in the event that something were to happen. Their doctors claim they're in great health. Look, take that with a grain of salt in both cases, perhaps, but it's worth considering that possibility tonight.
Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Mike Pence will turn his attacks toward Hillary Clinton, which is typical of a vice presidential debate. That's what they've been doing in debate prep. Scott Walker's been playing Tim Kaine, apparently insisting on being in character the entire time. So when Mike Pence walks in, Scott Walker sticks out his hand as Tim Kaine. So I think
of the energy and intensity in that room. Scott Walker, Mike Pence, head to head.
Going at it. So I think Pence will turn his attacks to Hillary Clinton. But I also think he has an opportunity here to make conservatives who are uncomfortable with Donald Trump more comfortable with Donald Trump. I mean, Mike Pence is a conservative. He speaks the language of conservatives. He doesn't need focus groups to remember what to say to conservatives. This comes naturally to him. And I think what he hopes to do is put people at ease who have concerns about Donald Trump and his ideology, his philosophy.
What about Tim Kaine, Tucker? I mean, he'll be on the attack, obviously trying to link Pence with Trump and probably go after temperament again and again and again.
Well, I mean, he's going to try and tie Pence to Trump. I mean, the whole debate is going to be that, and that is exactly the moment that Pence gets tripped up, because he has to defend Trump, both because he's a subordinate partner in this relationship. Of course, that's why it's tough to be the VP candidate, but because also Trump demands that. Trump wants to be defended by his VP. And Pence wins if he takes it to 35,000 feet. He is an ideologue, as Steve said. He's a former talk show host. He's a frequent guest, or used to be on talk shows. He's a good debater. But if he pulls it up and says, look, the country is a mess. That's why you've been considering voting for Trump in the first place, and you're running mate, Hillary Clinton, is part of the reason it is. If he can keep it there, he wins. If they're down in the weeds defending, this or that comment from Trump, that is not good.
There's an interesting moment the day after the debate, the last debate, where Mike Pence appeared on Fox, on America's Newsroom, and did an interview, and he said, this is not so much about candidate versus candidate as it is differing visions, which is an interesting way to frame it. I mean, it's not a way that a typical vice presidential candidate would frame it. I thought it was interesting. I think the Clinton campaign is going to try to make it about candidate versus candidate and separate Pence from Trump. Say, look, Mike Pence, you're reasonable, you're conservative, but you're not crazy, and that guy over there that you're defending is crazy.
Over under that Tim Kaine speaks Spanish?
Over under, I think Tim Kaine could throw in some Spanish there. Yeah, I mean, I think he'll try and make him essentially Mike Trump. I totally agree with that, and I'm interested to see how the moderation of this debate works too. You've moderated a lot of debates, obviously, but this is we saw it with Lester Holt, a real hands-off approach. It'll be interesting to see how the moderator lets these two candidates go. Does she really jump in and try and essentially litigate the rules and keep them in lanes, or frankly, do we have a much more unscripted exchange?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know Elaine Quijano with CBS. She's a great lady. I've worked with her a number of times at the White House and other places. I expect her to do well, but she's not well known either. So, Ed, the challenge is...
Big cast unknowns tonight.
Yeah.
What is it? 25.6 million is the number to beat. That was the least watched VP debate back in '96, the Gore-Kemp exchange.
You're not doing anything for us here on the tees.
I'm just saying.
On the tees.
And then 70 million was the Biden-Palin exchange. So, somewhere in between, I do my homework.
But I mean, besides Lloyd Benson and Dan Quayle,
that's right,
and Sarah Palin and Joe Biden, can any...
Well, Geraldine Ferraro, George Bush in 84.
But I mean, were there moments that moved the needle?
I actually think this could, because look, what does the Trump campaign need? It needs a kind of intellectual framework to explain what it's about. And the candidate is spotty at doing that at best, and I think Pence potentially could be pretty good. I think he's really got the opportunity to reframe this in a pretty fundamental way. I mean, turning the discussion that's been nonstop over the past week on just one issue of taxes. Here's a chance for the campaign to turn the corner, have a fresh start coming into Sunday, and I think if Mike Pence is, going to step up and do the job. He's ready.
Change. That's what he keeps hitting.
Yeah,
I think so.
Change.
But I tell you, if all he's doing is shoring up conservative concern with this ticket, what does that tell you? That there's really no room for growth here. There wasn't much growth last week necessarily. Maybe her numbers came back and doubts were assuaged. But I mean, if all he's doing tonight is reassuring Republicans, that's not much of a good sign for the
needs to be done.
It is.
Still not getting as many.
That's the point. How ironic that is what he has to do tonight. He has to appeal to the base.
I bet they're trying not to make news. That's my bet. But we'll see. Gentlemen, thank you. Back with some final thoughts after one more quick break. Finally tonight, at just under 2 hours, I'll be inside the debate hall, joined by Megyn Kelly to kick off our debate coverage. Pence versus Kaine, their only showdown, 9 segments, 10 minutes each. No matter what I just said, it's going to be exciting, especially if you're following this race closely, as you are probably.